Welcome to Deeper with Darshana, where we skip the small talk and dive down into what's raw and real. Pleasure, shame, justice, power, healing, liberation. These essential aspects of our human experience are among my favorite topics to explore, and I'm inviting you to join me. I'm your host, Darshana Avila, somatic sex and trauma expert and creator of the Erotic Wholeness Method. It is my belief that we are erotic by nature, and our erotic nature encompasses so much more than you might realize. Come along as I drop into curious conversations with other passionate pros and sensual seekers, and occasionally share musings of my own. Bring your curiosity, your sacred, messy, beautiful humanity, and all the parts of yourself. And let's go deeper together. Hey friend, welcome back to Deeper with Darshana. So glad you're here. And I am so excited for you to listen in on this conversation that I had with Julia Feldman of Giving the Talk. Now, with a slogan like sex ed for this century, you know it's going to be good. And the thing is, Julia is an academic and a teacher at heart who brings so much love and care and candor to talking about sex in ways that simply make sense. Whether we're talking about for the little ones in our lives, to the grandparents in our lives, to those of us who are in the middle. One of the things she spoke about was drawing a parallel between puberty and perimenopause. We talked about relationships to our body, what it is to really feel respected and honor ourselves, never mind those around us. So many juicy tidbits in this conversation. I can't wait for you to hear it. So listen in and enjoy. Welcome back to Deeper with Darshana. I am here today with Julia Feldman, the founder of Giving the Talk. And she is a teacher who supports people of all ages with compassionate, empowering, and scientifically accurate sex education, which we all deserve. And I love that on your Instagram, it says sex ed for this century. Yes, please. I'm very much here for that. And thank you for being here, Julia.
It's my absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And I love, most people would want to know, I certainly want to know, how did you get into this being your work, your calling? Like, were you always walking this trajectory, or what happened in life to get you here?
Yeah, it was I think we all end up in weird places through a combination of lots of experiences. I was raised by two teachers, and I think that it was kind of deeply in who I am that I would probably go forth and do something related to education. I was really taught from a young age that teaching other people is kind of the highest calling, and I definitely internalized that message. And then when I was in high school, I started having some really intense chronic health issues, very mysterious, challenging, uncomfortable, debilitating experiences. And I had to learn how my body worked and how to advocate for myself with medical professionals. And those are two skills that most teenagers don't know how to do.
I argue that most adults don't know how to do
absolutely.
that. And so hearing that you came to that as a teenager, that's incredibly inspiring. And I'm guessing a pretty tall order.
It was a lot to deal with that while also contending with my illness.
Yeah.
And so in the process of that, I learned how to talk about bodies, how to support other people in talking about bodies, how to communicate about bodies in a way that didn't feel uncomfortable, that felt empowering, that felt safe, that felt comfortable for me. And then I realized that was a skill that was so badly needed by so many people in my life. So I became the person who people would come to when they had some sort of weird thing and was scared to talk to someone. I've got a bump here. What could it be? I was that friend, or the friend who explained how to negotiate talking about a condom with your partner because I could model how to talk about bodies and without shame. And so that was a skill that I just kind of took with me. And when I was in college, I started doing peer health education, and I kind of got to teaching sex ed through a circuitous route. But yeah, it really started off with me just realizing that learning to advocate for myself and learning to understand my body was an essential skill that the world needed, and I wanted to share with other people.
I love the simplicity. You said, my friends would come to me to learn how to put a condom on because I knew how to talk about bodies. It encapsulates that so much that is fundamentally
what we're here to do. Like, we are in these bodies. Bodies are normal. Bodies are natural. Bodies in all their many iterations and expressions. And I know you and I share some very strong opinions and some strong values around taking shame and stigma and discrimination out of bodies being bodies. What would you add to that? Because you talk, am I correct that even though you do sex ed for everyone, you talk a lot to younger folks? Is that correct? Or like,
I mean, I work
caregivers?
Yeah. I work with people of all ages. Most of my work is done with middle school and elementary age students, some high school students, and then parents. But I also work at SF General with survivors of breast cancer, talking about sexuality after breast cancer. I work with senior citizens. I work with parents of preschoolers. But one thing that really came up for me as you were talking was just, I did an event last Thursday for a PTA at a school, talking to parents of 4th and 5th graders. And it reminded me so much about how the powerful thing that I do, I mean, I'm good at what I do, but the powerful thing that I do is that I show people how to talk about bodies in a way that feels comfortable and empowering. And I feel like it's so akin to what you do in terms of working with people to understand that their bodies are not scary, are not broken, that so much of the work that we do is simply kind of modeling how to be okay with these things that intrinsically we should be okay with, right? Like, so much of it is stripping away at these stories. It's wild that I have to go and teach parents of 4th graders how to talk about bodies with their kids. They've been talking about their bodies their entire lives. They've potty trained their kids. They're not exposing themselves in public. You know, they've done, kudos to these parents. They've done a good job. But to just show the parents, like, this is how you talk about puberty, a topic that's been so stigmatized. Here's how you do it in a way that feels comfortable. They just need to see me doing it, and then they can go home and do it. You know, so much of it is just stripping away those layers.
100%. I think stripping away the layers of shame and stigma and confusion, but also it's really giving permission and modeling, right? Like, to your point there, like the ease of having a conversation comes from knowing what the conversation needs to encompass. So even though I'm a big fan of saying, like, ditch the script, by which I mean ditch the outdated cultural narratives that aren't serving us and that are reinforcing the shame and what have you, sometimes we actually do need a simple script to be able to follow or to riff from, to open up a conversation about a thing that might feel a little tender, a little sensitive. And certainly it makes sense. We do feel that way about bodies and sexuality. We know, like, if dear listeners, like, there's nothing wrong with that being the experience. If there was a quote unquote wrong, it's when we say stuck in that discomfort and don't actually get out. So I love hearing, like, you talking to parents at a PTA meeting about a conversation about puberty. I'm like, I need to send my brother to you, I think, because my oldest nephew is, like, right at the cusp of puberty.
Yeah. And it's wild because these parents lived through it. They're watching it happen. And even just finding the words to acknowledge it with their children can feel so frightening. And so much of it is really stripping away that fear. You know?
But your point, like, yes, we live, if you are a parent, it's a statement of fact that you went through puberty, right? However, many of us in our formative experiences really didn't go very well. We felt shamed. We felt disconnected. People listening might be like, puberty was the most hellish chapter of my life, or my family didn't talk about anything. And so how do you help adults, whether it's to talk to their children or to better understand and make peace with, or even go back and reparent their younger selves around this? Like, what's some of the foundational guidance that you're giving people?
Yeah, well, I mean, starting off, people either replicate the terrible things that were done for them, or they pull back and don't do anything. And those are the two reactions that I normally get. Or there's the parents that really want to do better, and they buy a few books, and then they freeze and they freak out and they stop doing it. And so much of my guidance for parents is about the fact that they need to start off by reparenting themselves, that they need to get the puberty books, not for their kids, but for themselves. They need to cultivate a different relationship with puberty, but also a different relationship with the idea of bodies changing. Because one of the things I talk about a lot with parents who are, having kids that are entering this process of puberty, most of the parents that I talk to now are also themselves, the ones with the uterus, are also embarking on this process of perimenopause. So within one house, you have all of these changes going on. And so my first message for parents is that we need to stop talking about puberty as like this big change, because change in our bodies is the only constant. Our bodies are always changing. And as parents, I think above all else, our job with helping usher our kids through this process of puberty is to help them cultivate a relationship to their body changing that is one of curiosity, one of compassion, one of equanimity, right? Like things are happening. Can we still be okay in ourselves while crazy things are happening around? But it's really about shifting our understanding of what it means to have our bodies change and the way that we think about it and talk about it and react to it.
Yes. Okay. I love that you did the puberty to perimenopause, menopause cycle.
The pipeline there, right?
It is. It's a pipeline. And as you were speaking that's exactly where my mind was going. Like we are, particularly if you are born into a female body, a body that cycles. And it's not to say that male-bodied folks or intersex folks don't have their own changes, but particularly for us with the uteri, it is not a one and done thing at puberty. It is a continual thing. And I think it's so interesting. I hadn't necessarily considered, a lot of my clients are perimenopausal, postmenopausal. That's my set. But I hadn't necessarily considered how their formative experiences during puberty might be informing the relationship they have to the changes they're experiencing further on in life. And what you said about curiosity and creativity, or maybe you didn't even say creativity, but curiosity.
I'm there with you.
This is the same guidance I give my clients around exploring their sexuality as adults in a different way. Like when we can be curious about what feels good in our bodies, about what we like, about our desires, about the things we're repelled by, that curiosity breeds creativity, because then it's like, oh, I can experiment in these different ways. So I love, that pipeline. I'm going to keep using that word. the puberty to menopause pipeline.
Because there's also the reality that between those spaces of time, between puberty and perimenopause, there's also so much change. Your from your skin to your other parts of your body, like the shape of your body is going to change. The way your body feels is going to change. The way you feel when you wake up in the morning is going to change. There is going to be so much change. And I think that that's something that we all navigate and experience so individually. And there's a lot of shame around it too, right? We're taught that like our body has like an ideal weight or an ideal place that it should be or an ideal way that it should look. And when we deviate from that, we have lots of big feelings about it. And I think that starting off in puberty, if we could learn to notice change and instead of reacting to it or resisting it or having bad feelings about it, we could just learn to kind of sit with it and be curious about it. I think that would shift the relationship we have with our bodies our entire lives.
Yeah. I mean, that's the foundation here. The relationship with our body will be with us our entire life. So it's a pretty primary one to do well, to get good at. And I'm remembering, puberty, little after, I remember, I was like, I gained a little baby weight. I lost the weight, like I'm growth spurts. I thinned out, I plumped up. And I think I was 15, if I remember correctly, the first time I formally dieted. I went to Weight Watchers and I was like, oh, my little chub's like not okay. Like I have to fall in line. And
it was a rite of passage for you, right?
Like growing up in like a middle class, like white predominant environment, like you need to be thin, you need to be fit, you need to, present yourself in this certain way to be seen as attractive. And I remember my parents distinctly commenting about what I ate and how much I weighed. And my mother was more like fashion forward. So how I presented myself and how deeply entrenched those things have been. And here I am on the cusp of 45. So we're talking 30 years and I'm still unwinding that, even as I guide other people to do it, which is to say it's deeply in there. And I don't think it's for any of us a one and done journey. What do you see around body image, like coming up in the people that you're supporting and in the conversations you're having? And I'm especially curious, like when you hear parents reflecting like on themselves as they're reflecting on their parenting journeys with all this, like it's got to be many layered experience.
Yeah, it is a many layered experience. And the interesting thing is that I feel like most parents that I work with because they're scared and because they're coming with these different pieces that they've flagged as being issues or urgent, a lot of the issues that they bring to me are things like, my daughter wants to wear a crop top and I don't feel comfortable with it, or like, how do I communicate my values around this and that? And it's funny because I feel like this educator and guide with them in this process, I have to walk them back so many steps and, start off with, I'm always trying to remind them that our goal is to be the askable adult in our kid's life. Our goal, I'm working with parents when puberty is starting, and I try to remind them that this is a long game. And for me, like, my goal parenting kids through puberty is that when they're in high school and something really bad happens, like something related to sex or drugs or, I want to be the first person that they think to call.
Yeah.
I want to be the obvious person, not the person they're scared to call, but like, oh shit, this happened. I need to call mom. She's going to help me, you know? And so I feel like so often when parents come to me and they're like, how do I talk to them about their body? How do I talk to them about this thing or that thing? That's a concern of mine. My message to them is continually like, oh, pause. You're making it about you. It's not about you. You have so much baggage. You have so many stories that you're carrying. And for us to unravel all those stories and fix you first it's not going to happen, right? Like, I hope that you're doing that work. I really do.
That's what therapy is for.
And right, and like, in order to do right by your kid, you need to center their experience. And so much of the work I do with parents is teaching them to kind of like notice their thoughts and feelings about things. Like, you notice that your daughter wants to wear a crop top and you have big feelings about that. Put that feeling in a box and put it on the shelf. We can process that later. Were you not allowed to wear it? Did you feel like you were sexualized? Did you feel like the clothing you wore got you reactions that you didn't want? There's so many stories going on, but none of those stories are actually about your kid. And so much of the work related to things like body image, related to other issues that come up, is really about getting the parent to focus on their child. What does my child need in this moment? What does my child want to know? How can I best support them? And so, when you talk about things like the crop top, because everyone's bringing up the crop top, they're really in style right now, is that fourth and fifth grade kids, they want to emulate older fashion. They want to emulate the behavior of those older than them. And so much of the work that I do with parents is really getting them to talk with their kids about what makes you feel good, what clothing makes you feel confident and comfortable. When you see these things that other people are wearing, what makes you want to wear them? Is it that they're wearing it? Is it that makes you feel comfortable? You want to fit in? Like, really getting them to engage with their child on a deeper level about motivations instead of just taking something at face value. Like, how does it feel in your body when you wear that? Do you like getting attention? Do you notice that you get attention? Is the attention positive? Like, does that make you feel powerful? And really kind of getting the young people to scrutinize like what their internal motivators are instead of just accepting whatever they're told should be.
And the advice you just gave does not only apply to a parent talking to a child. I mean, everything that you just said, these are the exact same things that we need to be hearing, whether we're talking about the choice of clothing, the choice of sexual activity, the choice of who we date and relate with, whatever it is. How do you feel? What is motivating you? And I think, steering this away from parent dynamics for a bit, because a lot of people listening, like myself, may not be parents, but
totally,
this is so applicable to I think that a place where so many of us are really not in an intimate relationship with our own selves. We don't have a true pulse on what is my motivation here? What drives this choice? Am I at the whims of conditioning or the latest trend, as opposed to really sourcing from within an embodied sense of this is my authentic yes, this is my authentic no? And that's definitely, what I feel very passionately about. Anything you want to add to that one?
Yeah. I mean, so much of the work that I do with young people is about getting them to be able to check in with themselves and authentically determine, how does this relationship make you feel? How does learning about this make you feel? How does the change in your body make you feel? And I think that if we are able to start having people scrutinize those authentic feelings when they're younger, hopefully, like the hope, gosh, we hope, is that when they're older, it's gonna impact their life there as well, sure. Right? That if we can really engage in that process of connecting with ourselves, gosh, what an amazing world it would be, right?
I 100% agree with you there. Okay, let's steer this conversation in a slightly different direction, if you're willing. And that is the role that pleasure plays in all of this. Because, when you were talking about the example of a teenage girl wanting to wear a crop top, or even like a tween girl, like the motivation there, or the issue there, is sexualizing a child, basically, where like they themselves have not developed sexually yet. Like, it's a t-shirt, y'all, but we ascribe all this meaning to it. And I feel like even the notion of pleasure is one that, when we don't understand that in our formative years, becomes sticky into adulthood. How does pleasure factor into your teachings and the conversations that you're having and the work you do?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that in our current climate, it's something that I've really had to scrutinize, because I think it's one of my professional vulnerabilities, the idea that I do advocate for talking with people of all ages about pleasure. I think there's a lot of people that find that problematic, and I stand firm in what I do. So if a school doesn't like it, I am happy to teach somewhere else. But I teach people that bodies should feel good, that it is our birthright to feel pleasure. And when I talk about anatomy, I begin to introduce it early. I talk about the clitoris, I talk about the glands of the penis, and I talk about the fact that these are certain parts of our bodies that have an extremely high concentration of sensory nerve endings. I explain what sensory nerve endings are, and kind of in a very objective way, about how our body is covered in these really great little messengers that communicate with us about how things feel. When someone tickles us, we get a tickly feeling. When someone stomps on our foot, it hurts. It sends a message to our brain, and our brain says, "Ow, that hurts," or "Wow, that feels really good."
Right.
And that is an objective experience. Like, there's so much about bodies and pleasure that we believe are, with all the messages about grooming and, believing that sex educators are all pedophiles. There's a lot of stuff I have to, wade through. But at the end of the day, our bodies feel good. And the fact that our bodies have the capacity to feel good is not something that's dirty. It's not something that's morally charged. It's just fact. And when I teach people about bodies, I make it really clear that touching your body because it feels good is a very normal thing to do. Your body belongs to you. You get to decide how to engage with it. And that as you get older and move through different types of experiences with your own body and with other people, pleasure is the measure. Things should feel good. And if it doesn't feel good, get the heck out of there and stop it and figure out what you can do to make things feel good. But when I talk about sex with teenagers, I make it really clear your pleasure is the priority. And if you're in a situation where you're engaging, and we talk about all the different reasons why people might have sex, from getting paid for it, to wanting to feel cool, to wanting to feel connected to someone, to wanting to feel loved, to wanting to feel pleasure, to wanting to explore or find different parts of yourself. There's so many different motivators. And it's amazing when you talk to a room full of 15-year-olds, how many amazing ideas they have about why people might want to have sex. But at the end of the day, I make it really clear it should feel good. And if it doesn't feel good, why are you doing it? Right?
Bless you. You're doing the Lord's work.
And it's shocking to me that that's such a controversial thing, because when I talk to any parent, there's sometimes a little reaction, or like, "Oh, you're talking with my kid about pleasure." And then I remind them, this is their body. They're going to have it their entire lives. This is their developing sexuality. It's going to develop, and it's going to be with them for their entire life. And if you could start off early by creating this expectation that you deserve pleasure, you deserve to feel good, you deserve to feel safe, and that is the bare minimum. Those are the things that everyone deserves from a sexual or intimate interaction. And beyond that, sky's the limit. But if you don't have that, like, why would we do it?
You are preaching to the choir over here. And also, most of my clients, given that I'm working with people who are well into their adulthood, because that was not their formation around sexuality, because it was not an ethos of pleasure and a culture of consent that they were shaped and formed by, here they are, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, really never having had a sexual experience that they truly felt was for their pleasure. Now, that's a different thing. Sometimes you might enjoy aspects of sex, but really having that clarity, like, oh, this is for me and I get to feel good. And if I don't, what on earth am I doing here? A lot of adults, particularly the women I support, are unwinding from that after years of lived experience to the contrary. So you're catching the early end of this cycle and empowering kids to, I mean, and kids, teens, like these terms I realize can be a bit delicate here, but also too, I think there's something again about in an age appropriate way, because a 12-year-old can know about pleasure and it doesn't have to be in a sexualized context. So simply
Absolutely.
the idea that, and I mean, I was with my 19-month-old godson last night. I mean, that little one knows about pleasure up the wazoo. Everything is about, and there's something so innocent about the sensuality, the everything is tactile, experiential, just immersing his whole little body in everything he's doing. That is a highly sensual experience. For him,
Oh, yeah.
most of the time, it's a highly pleasurable experience. He's 19 months old. They're like nothing sexual about it, but
Yeah.
somehow a lot of people can't really hear the word pleasure without wanting to sexualize it. Do you encounter some of that same like wire cross?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I have to confront some of the adults that I talk to and remind them that they're the one that's sexualizing children in this situation, you know? And when I teach young kids about self-touch, you know, I explain that there's ultrasound footage of fetuses in the womb stimulating their genitals over and over again. They're not stimulating their elbow over and over again. They're touching their vulva over and over again. And the only reason they would do that is because it objectively feels good. You know, these infants and fetuses, they're not telling themselves stories about being sexual. They're not fantasizing. They're not watching porn. You know, there's nothing sexual going on here. It's that there is a pleasure cycle in the brain and body that rewards certain types of touch.
Absolutely.
And when we can really learn to strip it away, you know, like I have that same issue come up with parents of young kids when they say, oh, my kid wants to know how babies are made. Like, what do I possibly tell them? And I explain to them, your young child wants to know how babies are made the same way they want to know how their Legos are made. You know, they don't want to hear about the hot, steamy night you had. They want to know, logistically speaking, like, oh, there's this thing called a sperm and somehow it encounters an egg and then the cells multiply. Like, that's wild. You know, but that there's so many, you know, so many parents are scared. The kids ask, like, where do babies come from? And parents are so scared they stop there because in their mind, they're infusing all of their mature adult sexual experiences and memories and stories into what they're talking about, as opposed to just understanding, again, putting yourself in your kid's mind, like, what do they actually want to know? Why are they asking this? Because they're curious about how, you know, that lamp was made and that chair was made and how they were made.
And I love bringing it back to curiosity. And for me, it's the term that I use a lot, erotic innocence, which is what I was describing about my godson. Like, you know, like just, it's that we are born into bodies that are by nature sensuous. And that is not code for sexual. I mean, it can evolve into and relate to our sexuality when that is developmentally appropriate. But I think, you know, the thing that I'm seeing a lot is adults who did not have a period of truly being celebrated and encouraged and feeling safe in their erotic innocence, then go on to feel overly protective and then inadvertently or maybe not shaming and suppressing that in others around them. And it's not just children. You know, so I see this in adult relationships with partners, with lovers, where there's a lot of stickiness around being more sensual or affectionate, thinking that it has to be an escalator to sex. And that's the reason why, and this is, I'm going to gender this one. It's not always the case, but in a heterodynamic, a lot of women do not feel like they can be just like cuddly and kiss and touch in more lighthearted ways with their partner, because they never got to have experiences where that was its own valuable thing, period, end of sentence. It didn't escalate into sex. Their partner might feel, male partner, entitled to sex from them. And it really robs a lot of us of this joyful, pleasurable experience of being in our bodies.
Because we were taught it was foreplay. Right? Yeah, that any sensual, I know, don't get me started on that. Any sexual experience is necessarily coming before the main event, right? That any type of sensuality must necessarily want to escalate to sex because that is the height of intimacy, or that is the only logical reason that you would engage with someone in that way. You said one other thing that stuck with me. You were talking about how people try to kind of protect people in their lives, and that shame and protection, there's such a fascinating relationship between those two. Parents so often think that by shaming their child, they're protecting them. That is like the best way to ensure that they don't encounter bad experiences. And I think that happens in romantic relationships a lot too. This idea that like, I'm going to say something to you that's going to shut you down, but it's for your own protection. And the notion that like, wow, there are so many other ways we could better ensure people's safety and protection other than making them feel shitty about themselves.
Namely, empowering people to know their bodies and to discern yeses and nos, danger and safety and things like that.
Right? Be able to connect with that on their own instead of relying on an external factor to decide it for them.
Right. Because fundamentally, I mean, and I know this through my lens as a both in the trauma healing side of my work and the more expressly sexual side, safety is never a guarantee on the outside. It's just, it's not like there's no way it can be. But what you do have the possibility of is feeling so at home and connected to your own being that your sense of safety within can be really intact. And your barometer, your discernment of like, go this way, not that way, vice versa, that helps keep you safe. And that's what gets overridden for so many people by being disconnected from their bodies.
And that's a skill that has to be cultivated. And I talk about that a lot with parents, especially with young kids, but people of all ages. You know, I talk with parents about give your kids options, so many options. Do you want carrots or cucumbers? Do you want to sleep in pajamas tonight or in your like dance clothes? You know, like just so many different options so that they can practice checking in with themselves and making a decision. That, you know, you expecting someone to be able to negotiate consent and communication and about making big decisions when they haven't had a lot of practice making the small ones can be really, really hard. So those are muscles we have to flex. We have to practice. We have to learn how to find our voice and communicate it to someone else. And that takes so much time. Yeah. We don't just, that's not something we can figure out overnight. It's a skill that has to be cultivated.
100%. And it's not a very complicated skill. So I want to distinguish here between simple and easy. It's actually a very simple thing that has been made hard, and repetition and practice gets to make it easy. And it's making me think about, so my nephews who are now 12 and 13 and a half, since the time they were young, I would give them touch options. So if, you know, but instead of just assuming like, oh, you want to cuddle or you want me to touch you this way, I'd be like, do you like it when I tickle or do you like it when I rub? You know, like, and I did this with them when they were itty bitty. So I've been teaching them consent. And I've also been teaching them that if they tell me they don't want something, I back off, no questions asked. And so here I watch those very same things. Like when I'm when I've got a 45-year-old on my table, and I'm trying to help her learn what it is that she would like from her partner, we do the same thing. I refer to it as the A/B comparison. Do you like it like this or do you like it like that? And many of us really need that type of structure to practice inside of because we haven't cultivated that quick discernment simply for lack of practice. So it sounds like you're giving very similar guidance that's going on in my studio too.
Yeah, absolutely. That we have to practice it. I also love that like anecdote with your family members about how you're also teaching them about different types of touch, right? I feel like that subtlety is something that is so lost, you know? This notion that like, do you like feeling tickled? Do you like firm touch? Do you like gentle, you know, light touch? That learning that stuff early on, that there's a variety of different types of touch, that you can specify what you like, that you can, you know, tell people what you don't like, that you can communicate boundaries. I feel like, again, it's wild that these are concepts that we don't get when we're younger.
I know. I mean, I refer to it as the menu of touch, and all of my clients learn the menu of touch, and there's like 15 options on it.
Yeah.
Most of us are walking around saying, touch me. What does that mean? What does that mean? It could mean slap me, pinch me, pull me, tickle me, you know, like, so yeah, the vocabulary, and this is kind of goes back to what we said earlier, like vocabulary and modeling scripts to help make these conversations easy. It's such an empowering thing. Like, I feel like that slogan, like the more you know, I'm dating myself. Like knowledge is power, you know?
I mean, I wrote an article, gosh, it was probably like 9 or 10 years ago now, that came out around the holidays called "You Don't Have to Hug Grandma," and it was an explanation for adults about like all different ways to engage with kids when it comes to touch. The expectation that they're going to give you a hug when they say goodbye or when they arrive. Like, are you going to go for the high five or the pound, or what other ways can you offer touch?
Right.
And trying to train older relatives that it is not a rejection of you, that it doesn't mean they don't love you, that also disrupting those notions that older relatives have about their right to be able to access young people's bodies, their right to touch, that they've earned this role. There's so many messed up layers that we have in there, both for the young people feeling compelled to touch and the older people and their stories about it. And I feel like, gosh, if we could disrupt, we got to disrupt it all.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, because that really is, and I use that same example often with how we get indoctrinated to not feeling agency in our bodies, because from our youngest years, we were being told, make your body available in ways you don't want to other people. And that is what will lead us to being in a marriage for 25 years, detesting sex with your partner, but doing it anyway. The whole, like, I go along to get along, like, paradigm I see, with a lot of the people that I'm supporting. Oftentimes I'm supporting them after they've finally left the marriage. Sometimes I'm supporting them while they're still in it, but it has its roots in the same things that we're speaking of here today that go on with little ones. And so, this really, like, you're doing some like deep culture disrupting work in the best possible way.
I'm trying really hard. And also with the knowledge of what's going on in most classrooms in this country, which is the complete polar opposite. I feel like I'm carving out this little world of my beliefs and hoping to spread it around, also knowing that the direction this country is going right now in terms of curriculum and resources and book availability, that everything is really swinging the other way. And so I feel like what we do is really important all the time, and even more so now as there's this tidal wave of really conservatism and horrible things.
Yes, we need to place this in context. And I know I follow you on Instagram primarily. So like, you're really good also about sharing, like, here are places you can get good resources. So I want folks to know where to find you, where, if they want to learn more about you, I'm shouting it out, giving the talk on Instagram, like, go. Where else can folks lean in and learn more about what you're up to? If they're a parent who's like, oh, my kid's class needs this, or if there's someone who wants to just learn how to talk to their own child, or an adult who doesn't have kids, how do they get at you?
Yeah, I mean, there's my website, givingthetalk.com. People can email me or DM me on Instagram. I love a project. I love working with young people. I love working with people one-on-one. I love groups of parents and kids. I'm passionate about what I do, and I feel like the right people come to me, and I love working with them. Yeah. So if someone feels like the work I'm doing speaks to them, please reach out.
And you are a joy and so generous. I'm attesting, like, what you put out is amazing. Julia, is there any last little nugget, something we might not have talked about, or that you just want to reiterate to leave folks with today?
Oh gosh, I mean, it's probably not going to come out in the most concise way possible, but I think that talking with you and thinking about the overlap in terms of the work that we do, I just feel this like intensely strong sense that I want everyone listening. I want the people that encounter me and encounter you to really understand that the capacity is within them to have the beautiful, connected, pleasurable experience that they want in their body and in the world, and that it's all within us. And that the work that we're both doing is really about giving people permission to connect with that, to strip away all of the horrible things that have been told to them that they've internalized, but that ultimately, like, we all have the capacity to live that type of authentic, pleasurable, connected, empowered life. You don't need someone to give you permission to do that. That's something that we can all claim for ourselves.
Yes to that. So much yes. Thank you for being here, Julia. Thank you for giving the talk. And people, please go follow her. All the links will be in the show notes. And if you loved what you heard, drop us a rating, a little note. Let us know, because we want more people to be able to listen to this goodness. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.